I think we're all still in shock of Glenn's death last night on The Walking Dead episode titled Thank You. And there's a lot of theories that are out there. Before we hit to this weekend's episode, which was it's going to deal more with Morgan, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're not going to get the present time of what all the other characters are doing or another preview. And then Talking Dead did say, and I never watched Talking Dead, but I had to stay and watch Talking Dead this coming or after this last night's episode. But they said that they were going to have a special guest for next weekend. We don't know if that's the actor Steve. We don't know if Glenn is really dead. They didn't even have Glenn in the memorial. They didn't have Glenn in, normally they have the actor there when a certain death happens, and then they killed off Glenn before the end of the episode. That I don't have a tripe about. But this video really showcases what the theories are, what people are talking about out there, and maybe the biggest piece of evidence stating that Glenn is probably still alive. I would think it's a cop-out. The only way for me to really fully embrace Glenn being alive if they come up with a new, different kind of way that he got out, instead of the whole, which people are saying, Nicholas is on top of him, the zombies are ripping out his guts, and maybe he was crawling underneath the trash, the dumpster. Even though I don't think it's a dumpster. I think it's like a box something. The dumpster. I'm just going to call it a dumpster. But people always state, like, why is Glenn crying? Why is he in agony? Well, the case could be that he's in agony because Nicholas he was becoming a friend, and seeing somebody being ripped apart right on top of you, and knowing that you're probably going to be next. Anybody would be like that, would cry and shout and panic. So overall, Glenn agony and his facial expressions, I mean, it could easily be written off as he's just scared, and seeing somebody just be torn apart is just a frightening thing. Now there's a lot of clues too to maybe a foreshadowing or a hint that Glenn is still alive, especially with Michonne and speaking to Heath and her stating that, listen, I was covered full of blood. I didn't know if it was mine. I didn't know if it was the walkers. I didn't even know if it was my friends. So that could be the case with Glenn. When Glenn is covered in blood, in Nicholas's blood, when Nicholas commits suicide and shoots himself in the head, I mean, the walkers could maybe feel like Glenn is already dead, so they don't go after him, because Glenn is covered in Nicholas's blood. However, how does that work with Nicholas dead, but the walker's still pretty much eating him? So that theory alone is kind of iffy. And we all know from previous seasons that Glenn and Rick at one point did use walker blood, but they used walker blood. They used a walker who was already a walker. And it's interesting that they didn't do this for this episode as well, but like a lot of people are saying, then we wouldn't have the conflict and intensity of this episode like we had if they would have done that. If you read the comics, you know that there's a new revolutionary kind of way to get in around these walkers, and you're surprised that Glenn didn't even think about rubbing walker blood on him and being able to just kind of little bit dodge or get out of there with escape from these herd of walkers. So the other reason that I believe that Glenn may be still alive, which I don't want Glenn to be alive. It was a very emotional, very impactful episode. A lot of people do not like the way that Nicholas really tied in with Glenn's death, if that were the case. But I think it really showcases that, listen, something could always bite you in the ass if you don't, the decisions we make. If you play the game, there's a lot of decisions you have to make, and that's the decision that Glenn made last season, was to let Nicholas live. So letting Nicholas live really bit him in the ass in the long run, and he ended up perishing for it. And then there, of course, I've always stated the foreshadowing of the watch, the dumbass part, and also just overall Glenn trying to be a hero once again. But the biggest evidence to showcase that Glenn may still be alive is because the actor Steve is still around set, and he's maybe be flashback scenes that they're filming. But if you read the comics, how is Glenn gonna have flashbacks with Jesus? Jesus. I like to call him Jesus. But Jesus. And now Jesus is a important character in the comic book series, and he leads the way to another storyline, and definitely another possible. I don't want to ruin it because I think they are headed that way. I'll just say he's just a very important piece to the story, and in no way could have Glenn met him in previous or episodes, and then they're not introducing him in the beginning of the episode or anything like that. I just don't feel like Glenn with Jesus is a it's not a flashback. It can't be a flashback. There's no way it's a flashback. And there's a picture with him, Abraham, I believe Daryl or Rick. I'll have, like I said, you'll see it right now. Definitely showcases that maybe Glenn did make it out alive. And there is also, if you read the comics, there's also a lot of plot lines and a lot of things that happen with Glenn and Maggie towards the end of Glenn's life in the comics. And the way that Glenn demise in the comics was so much different, but that I don't necessarily need in a TV show. That I could see them saving for another character that I've been trying to push out and predict here. But with Glenn, I think possibility of him being alive and them not really truly confirming it and saying that he would come back, Talking Dead, saying that basically we would see him in some way or form or part come back, either be flashback, either be his body, just what's left of his body all over the ground, maybe the watch, something like that. But them not really truly confirm, no true confirmation that Glenn himself is dead, and we didn't really see him. We think that's his guts, but I think it's Nicholas's guts. We don't see him really die, but honestly, how do you survive that? I don't care if you go underneath the dumpster. He's a little bit, I mean, there's walkers all over him, like all over him. And this is kind of reminiscent of Rick in a tank as well. It just really felt like a lot of harken back to a lot of episodes in the past, and Glenn's character having demise like this. I mean, he's been a runner and he's definitely been a leader, and he pretty much went out like a leader. I just feel like having Glenn survive with that kind of situation, and you might take that route of him going underneath the dumpster, the blood getting on him. It's just kind of a cop out, and I believe Glenn should stay dead. And I think last night's episode was one of the best episodes in my opinion. And yes, that's not the way you want Glenn to go, but that's the beauty of The Walking Dead. That's the beauty of deaths and characters. That's how it goes. That's the zombie apocalypse. The way you go and the way you imagine, it's nowhere near the way you're going to actually end up going. So thank you guys for listening. If you haven't already, I would really appreciate if you subscribe to my channel. I have a lot more videos, a lot more Walking Dead videos, a lot more just TV, film, music, you name it. And also comment below. Love to hear you guys' thoughts on theories, this and that. So that's all I have to say, guys. And like the video if you like it. Until next time, until we talk more, The Walking Dead. I'll see you guys later.